So we've been asked repeatedly following our recent video of how a furlough works to do a follow-up to explain the very recent government updates to the scheme. As there have been some changes, we've once again done our homework. But not only do we have some interesting updates, but some equally interesting new bits of information that have come to light. Now, as the video is a follow-up and we're not going to explain how a furlough works, we urge you to see our previous video explaining this in the link above. Firstly, the changes were revised on the 17th of April. Now, originally, if you remember, Rishi Sunak announced the furlough scheme coming into place under the government's job retention scheme on the 20th of March. So this is basically the best part of a month until these updates have come to play. Now, most of these changes have largely gone unnoticed. Many are subtle updates with no real effect on most people. So let's just explain the key ones. Now, when Rishi Sunak announced the furlough scheme coming under the government's job retention scheme on March 20th, the way it worked was that for an employee to be eligible to be put on furlough, they had to be continuously employed since or before February 28th. Now, as this was announced on March 20th, 2020, that left the best part of a month basically between the February 28th and March 20th. During that period, what a lot of people don't know is there were around 200,000 people who changed jobs. So on April 17th, the government announced that they were changing the eligibility date for furlough from February 28th to bring it up to March the 19th. That happened to be the day before the original scheme's announcement. One question we have been asked a lot is around holiday accrual. Can I still accrue holiday if I am on furlough? Now, holiday accrual under the furlough scheme wasn't actually written into the original job retention scheme guidance notes. It was a bit of a grey area. So basically what happened was that employers were putting staff on furlough and those staff weren't sure, or it wasn't clear whether they were still eligible to accrue holiday whilst on furlough. Now, under English employment law, you would still be eligible to accrue holiday if you're on furlough. Basically, furlough is classed as paid or unpaid leave, depending on how you want to look at it. And under that, you would still be eligible for all of the benefits as an employee of the company. Now, in the updated guidance notes, they've actually put in there to say that holiday will accrue as per normal under furlough. Now, they're the two key ones. Maybe you've heard of those ones already, but we also dug up some very interesting ones. So we didn't just want to put the general updates on this video because it'll probably be about 2 minutes long, if that. So we wanted to put some other information that's actually going to be interesting. Now, before you switch off, you might want to hear this info because we've got a few loopholes we spotted, a few flaws we spotted, and a few ways around things to a lot of the questions that we're getting in our comments. So firstly, hmrc are concerned by fraudulent claims. As the claims are by companies claiming back the 80% of wages they pay to employees, they have to follow certain protocols. Now, basically the way it works is that officially a company to put you on furlough has to seek your permission. You see, under UK contract law, typically there would not be a furlough scheme in your contract. In other countries such as America, they are more commonplace, but in the UK, you're unlikely to have a furlough clause in your contract. So basically what the employer needs to do is to send you a letter in writing, and that can either be through the post where you sign it off and you send it back giving permission, or via email where you reply giving permission, and that permission is for you to say, I am happy to go on furlough. So that letter basically explains, we want to put you on furlough, do we have your permission in short? If they don't send you that letter, there is no proof that they have requested your permission to go on furlough. But that permission cannot legitimately come by a phone call or even a text. It has to be by headed paper, written, or via email. Many employers simply don't know or haven't followed this guidance. They've simply text the employee or called them up and said, do you want to go on furlough? And the employee is basically faced with either getting let go and getting 0% or being put on furlough and getting 80%. So all of them are just going, yeah, I'll go on 80%. So why is this a problem? Well, hmrc reserve the right to audit any business retrospectively during the next 5 years, and if there isn't written permission of them putting their staff on furlough, it's considered fraud. This means a huge fine, legal fees, etc. for your employer. The next question we get a lot on is about shielded employees or sick pay. Now, shielded employees are those with a pre-existing health condition considered serious if they were to contract the virus. Therefore, they are given 12 weeks leave of absence paid by the company. Now, under the scheme, you are actually allowed to put them on furlough for that period. They're not actually sick or anything, but you can put them on furlough. However, what a lot of people don't realise was if at any point you are on furlough, you then think, one way of getting a bit of extra money might be if I notify my employer that I'm actually sick or I'm ill or anything, can I claim sick pay, statutory sick pay on top, which is only £94.25 a week, but a lot of people might think, oh, it's a bit extra. That won't work. What will actually happen is your furlough will be temporarily cut for that period and replaced by your sick pay. So you have a bit of a dilemma. If you are actually sick whilst on furlough, should you declare it to your employer? Now, common sense says, what would you rather be paid? Statutory sick pay or 80% of your normal salary? Now, normal salary is probably much more likely to be more than £94.25 per week statutory sick pay. So I'll leave that up to your judgment. The issue is that some people have thought, can I claim statutory sick pay on top of furlough pay? And the answer is no. Statutory sick pay will replace furlough. And one question we get a lot about is around national minimum wage. For example, I'm on national minimum wage. Is my employer allowed to pay me only 80% of that? And the answer is yes, they are. It's 80% of any wage, whether it be national minimum wage or more than that. And that presents a problem for a lot of people. Most minimum wage people will make up their money on overtime, bonuses, extras. And the problem is if they're on minimum wage and they're not getting overtime, bonuses, extras, and they're only on 80% of it anyway, and the employer's not topping up the other 20%, which they don't have to, bear in mind, then you're going to be short of a few quid. So is there any way that you can make up your money to boost what income you have? If you're on national minimum wage, the easiest way to get that topped up a little bit is to ask your employer to say, will you give me the extra 20% and bring it up to 100%? Now, you've probably already done that, and to be honest with you, I doubt you're going to have much luck. So how do you get the extra 20% legitimately? Now, we found a few ways to boost the earnings of a national minimum wage paid employee legitimately, and here are a few ways around it. So the first one we found was that if your employer claims to put you on training during your furlough period, even if that's for up to 3 months, they can claim that money back up to 100% of your wages and therefore reimburse you for that. So instead of you being paid 80% on furlough, you can be paid 100% on furlough. What is considered training is very loose and open to interpretation. The guidance notes don't really actually detail much about it, so it's a bit of a grey area. But common sense says whatever training that has, it has to be something at least remotely related to the job that you do, and it will have to have some transactional value and documented evidence. So if your employer is investigated or given an audit by HMRC in future, they have the evidence to demonstrate that it was all legit and above board. Obviously, for this to work, your employer has to do it. So you've got to see what they'll say, how they'll do it, whether they'll agree to it or not, but legitimately under it, you can do it. So one of the questions we get a lot of is, can I take a second job? What can I do to make up my money? Now, the good news is you can take a second job, but you have to meet 2 criteria in order to do this. Firstly, your employment contract has to permit you to take a second job elsewhere. Now, under most UK employment contracts, there will not be a clause in it anywhere that will state that they give you permission to take a second job elsewhere. But this isn't the end of the story. There is a way around this. Nowhere does it say anything about that they cannot edit your contract or add what's called a cover letter to add in a clause into it to say they permit you to take a second job. In the same way that your employer will have to write to you either by email or by letter to gain your permission to go on furlough, which is also very unlikely to be on your contract, and therefore that would be considered an extra clause into it. Giving you permission or permitting you to take a second job is also an add-on clause. Nowhere in the guidance notes or anywhere does it say they cannot edit this at any point. In an employment contract, all they need to do is gain your permission to do it. So basically, your employer would have to therefore write to you saying, we wish to make an amendment in your contract to say you can take a second job, we permit you to take a second job. Can you sign off to say that you're happy to do this? The problem is you've got to get your employer to do it in the first place, but they can do it. Now, if they send you that and they give you permission and you were to sign or reply back to an email basically to say, yes, I agree for that clause to be added into my contract, step one of the two things needed is put in place. Now, the second thing you're going to need is that if your primary employer, that is the employer giving you permission to take a second job, asks you to come back at any notice whatsoever to work for them on their own whim, you come running. Now, bear in mind, you can only claim, no matter if you have 1, 2 or 10 jobs, a maximum of £2,500 total earnings via furlough during any one calendar month. So therefore, if your normal primary job paid you £3,000 per calendar month under normal circumstances, this isn't really going to make any difference to you if you were to take a second job. Now, you might be thinking, well, at this particular point, who's going to be looking for second jobs that's going to fulfill my obligation where I can go and take a second job, probably is unlikely to put me over £2,500 a month threshold, and that I can leave on a whim whenever I want? Just a suggestion, delivery driver, anyone? So with that, that pretty much completes the video. But if you do have any questions or you want to know anything more about furlough or any ideas for future videos, do put them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like the video, don't forget to click like, subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you won't miss any one of our forthcoming videos.